what is your current win total projection for the Saints? We aren't counting the draft. We aren't counting hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Just based on this today, March 17th, 10 a.m., what are you saying they're winning next season?
I will take into account that they have the 9th pick in the draft and 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. So I do know more help is on the way. I don't know who that's going to be yet, but kind of bleak. I mean, I'm going to pick 7 and 10. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are like, what? 2 wins, 3 wins. I mean, they've kept pretty much the entire roster together except for Paulson Adebo and a few depth pieces. They've added Justin Reed, Devon Godchaw, and a couple of depth pieces. They're going to be healthier than next year. And frankly, if you told me I could push a reset button on last year, boy, it felt like they were on their way to winning 10 games last year or whatever. So I'm dropping from 7, but I'm just dropping from 7 because the roster's getting older. The roster's getting worse. I went into last year thinking they were an 8-win team. I'm going into this year right now thinking they're a 7-win team.
I think last year was probably like around like that 500 variance with the swing either way, a couple directions. I think I'm still around that 500 variance, but it feels like the swing down is greater than the possibility of the swing up. And that might just be being jaded from seeing how it went last year.
Well, and there will be injuries. Like, we use injuries as some people will say it's an excuse. It's a very legitimate excuse for last year because it was like the most injured team I think either of us have ever covered. But there will be some injuries. This team does not get to be intact all season long.
But definitely, yeah, for sure that. But I do think that seeing it up close probably makes you feel more pessimistic about where it's at than where it might actually be at.
Yeah.
And I think if you are a fan who sat through the season or you're an analyst who sat through the season, there are times where you sit down and you're like, man, this team is just cooked. Like, there's no chance. And they probably realistically, if you factor in everything and a normal amount of injuries and where they're at and where they're going and better coaching, which I think is a huge part of it. I think you have to have better coaching. I think their coaching staff last year was a little bit light. They got fired for a reason, and I think the injuries might have been a blessing in disguise because they caused action on that side, whereas if they had went through the season a little bit more healthy and they get to that 8-win total, you might stay the same. So I think Kellen Moore and his staff helps quite a bit with that too. But all that considered, players are a year older. You're going to have injuries. Eric McCoy has historically been an injured player. Taysom Hill has historically been an injured player. Chris Olave has been injured the last couple of years. Rashid Shaheed. Derek Carr gets hurt every year. Demario Davis missed time. Like, these guys are not going to be on the field 100% of the time. Tyrann Mathieu doesn't really miss time, but he'll miss a half here or there. He got banged up a little bit last year. Guy's a warrior and plays through everything. But yeah, all those things considered within it, I think this is right now is about a 500 team is where I would put them, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. Maybe they have a great draft and you get that swing up. If they miss in the draft, I think you're swinging down. But I don't feel like they are significantly materially better than they were a year ago. And I don't know how anyone could think that. Justin Reed's a nice addition. Godchaw's a good addition. Adebo's a big loss. I just don't see where they've gotten way, way better to make you feel sunshine and roses about their possibilities going forward.
This is probably an impossible question, but average health, what do we think last year's team was? Was it a 9-8 team, basically? Was it a...
I think they had historically bad health. Like,
they had historically bad health. So I'm saying I think they were about a 9-8 team last year. I mean, I'm not going to overrate what we saw in the first 2 weeks, but they were competitive with Philly. They were not competitive with the Chiefs. They're a team that beats teams worse than them and loses. So if they're bringing back a 9-8 team, and then we're picking 8 and 9, that would be normal. That's kind of, I'm picking 7 and 10 just because I hate the depth on this team so much, and all their best players just keep getting older, and there's not a lot of young guys I'm excited to take the next step. Maybe Tali Fuaga, maybe Chris Olave if he gets better coaching and has a healthy season. But God, there's not a lot of young guys that I can't wait to see take the next step. But yeah, I feel like I'm predicting that the 9-8 team will become 7-8, whereas the conversation feels a lot more like they're going to go from 5 to 3, which I think is a little pessimistic. The funny thing is
I think that's a lot pessimistic.
Yeah. The funny thing is we talk about Derek Carr all the time. He's 9-6 over his last 15 starts with the Saints. 9-6. I think people would guess that is 5-12. That he's a 5-12 quarterback. He's 9-6 over his last 15 games. Now, he only beats teams worse than him. He does not ever beat teams better than him. But you were making the point before we started recording this that once again for the third straight year, their schedule is kind of crap. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of wins on the schedule.
If you are looking for, if you're sitting here and saying Nick and Mike are being way too negative, I think they're going to be a little bit better next year. They could win 10 games. If you are going to make an argument for them to be able to exceed expectations, the schedule does help. It is a last place schedule. You have home games against Arizona. That's not a juggernaut. San Francisco is a very weird team right now. They're probably better than the Saints, but they aren't the 49ers of previous seasons. The Patriots are a team that is picking below. They'll probably be better with Drake May, but that's a winnable game. Home game against the Jets, they're kind of a mess. Home game against the Giants, they're definitely a mess. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is playing for them. We'll see how that one plays out. And then you got away games against the Bears. That's possibly winnable. Miami, the Titans. And then you have the NFC South.
Titans,
the schedule sets up for you to achieve expectations, for Kellen Moore to have a solid first season. And if they don't, you have really underachieved. So if you're looking for a reason for optimism, I think it exists within the schedule. You were the worst team in your division.
It does help a little.
So that helps you get that schedule. It sets you up to have more parity and maybe inflate a little bit. So they might get a couple more wins this year than they otherwise would have with last year's schedule.
And they'll be 12 one-score games. So, I mean, are they going to go 3-9 in those? Are they going to go 9-3? What was it, the Vikings a couple years ago that, like, they won all 10 of their one-score games? And they like, won 11 or 12 games, and they went to the playoffs and just got creamed by the Brian Dable Giants because they were a fraud. But, a lot of teams exist in that middle. Real quick, you mentioned it, the back when there used to be magazines. Do you remember magazines?
It's crazy. Yeah.
They used to always have all right, here's the summary of the team's offseason. Key losses, key additions, or whatever. It's Justin Reed and Godchaw and maybe Isaac Yadam, and the key additions. Key losses is what? Paulson Adebo, Will Harris, MVS. Like, are they even in losses and additions so far? Are they behind?
I think they're quite ahead. I just tweeted this the other day. I'm going to read down the list. Justin Reed added, Godchow added, Yadam added, Jack Stoll added, Will Clapp and Jonah Williams all added. They kept Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, Dante Pettis. They lost Adebo, Will Harris, Valdez Scantling, Peyton Turner, and eventually Jamal Williams will probably hook on with it. I doubt he comes back. So he's a loss too. So not too bad. I think the overall add/kept is much higher than the last. This would look probably dire when you look at it through these terms. Each one of these signings was a little bit, hey, did they pay too much?
Yeah.
Is that cost too high? If you throw Chase Young and Juwan Johnson
in the losses,
and your additions are the Jonah Williams and Jack Stoll, that's really a tough place. I was reading some analysis yesterday just of the overall free agent market, and someone made a really good point. And man, I wish I remember where I read this, but their blurb on Juwan Johnson, it was that tight end is the one position in the league where the coaches probably most often look at it and go, yeah, but he'll be better in my offense. And that is a position where you look at someone and they're like, yeah, he'll fit here in this offense.
Okay.
They'll make use of his unique skill set. He has good hands and runs good routes. I will make him better than he was. That is probably the one position where your inflation of self and belief in your system probably impacts your analysis and cost evaluation more than any other position.
Well, Kellen Moore shows me that, then I'll become a Kellen Moore believer.
If he hits it, yeah.
No one else has hit on him yet. I'm not going to say ahead in that, but you could maybe talk me into even. But look, Paulson Adebo is the best player on that list, and cornerback's the most important position on that list. Do Justin Reed, Devon Godchaw, and Isaac Yadam 3-for-1 counteract Paulson Adebo?
No, because
it's close.
Corner's a premium position.
Yeah,
that's the one that kills you. It's just such a premium position, and a hole there is different than a hole anywhere else. And if they don't,
but I also don't think
hole,
Paulson Adebo is definitely an $18 million player.
No, I don't.
They're projecting there too.
But if you're evaluating just void versus void, I'd rather have a void at safety than a void at cornerback. And they have a void at cornerback right now. And if you could, in a perfect world, flip that and you get the top 20, Adebo was kind of rated a top 20 player, but if you get the best cornerback on the market or one of the best cornerbacks on the market and you flip it, like I would rather have the best corner on the market than the best safety on the market every single time. So that is a big It's a big deal.
I actually think they're slightly down. But Reed and Godchaux could give you a better run defense, and I'm probably underrating that, which was a huge thing for the Saints.
I don't think Paulson Adebo's an impossible player to replace. So either.
I agree
So
with
you
that.
know, if they draft one, maybe that offsets it a little bit. But we aren't considering the draft in this. That corner hold gives me a lot of insecurity about the overall health of the team. Yadam was really good here 2 years ago, but I think Dennis Allen's scheme really did a great job of hiding players. And then I think if you put him in this other one, I don't think you're getting the same results that you were 2 years ago. They had a weird thing going on where it just kind of felt like you could throw anyone in a corner and it didn't matter. Like Marshawn Lattimore was missing halves of seasons, and it got to a point where that was no longer a storyline. It's just he isn't there. They're going to put somebody in and they're going to be fine, and it's going to work week after week after week. I don't know that you get that same elevation in this system, and that really makes me really makes me nervous.